Shatterhand used its bionic fist to punch its way onto your NES back in 1991. And yes, before you ask, that is the actual box art for the game, which may explain why no one ever actually played it in the first place. It's a shame though, since Shatterhand is one of the very few games on the NES that I'd qualify as a genuine overlooked classic. Developed by Natsume and published by Jaleco, Shatterhand was largely overlooked due to coming out just a couple of months after the brand spanking new Super NES had hit store shelves. So absolutely no one was paying attention to Shatterhand when the likes of Super Mario World and Pilot Wings was dominating any and all video game media attention. But was a side-scrolling action game on a now last-gen console really worth hunting down at the time when way cooler stuff was out? Or am I letting my rose-tinted glasses get the better of me once again? Well, snap on your favorite robotic arms, because we're about to see if Shatterhand can shatter its Super NES competition. Start up Shatterhand and you're treated to a brief opening cinematic that's just as awesome and ridiculous as a cinematic in a game called Shatterhand should be. If for some reason you actually want to know the story to the game, you'll need to hunt it down in the instruction manual, as it's nowhere to be seen in the game itself. Essentially, you're playing as a guy that got his arms blown off and then had them replaced with bionic arms capable of taking down an entire evil army that's threatening the world. The story does get a bit more specific than that, but I'm not gonna waste everyone's time on the details of Shatterhand's half-assed plot that vaguely gives you a reason as to why you're running around and punching people until they explode. And if you're playing Shatterhand, then that's exactly what you want to be doing instead of caring about backstory. Once you're ready to start doing the aforementioned bionic punching, go ahead and press start to get into the actual game, where you're met with a very NES-looking game. Your character can run left and right, jump, and of course throw those deadly punches at anything in front of you. And while you may initially think that only being able to punch a foot or two in front of you would be super annoying and limit the action, it actually works really well. Only being able to attack enemies at close range gives the game a different feel from your typical run-and-gun action game, as you have to plot out the safest way to get to an enemy so you can unleash your punching fury. There are definitely times when you wish you had just a few more inches of attack range for some of the more annoying enemies, but there's always an optimal way to get to what's in your way without taking too much damage. While your punches are more than enough to get you through the game, Shatterhand goes the extra mile and includes one of the more crazy power-up systems that I've ever seen in a game. The most immediately obvious and confusing power-ups are the Greek letters that show up in boxes that you punch open and are littered around the stage. Continuing to punch the letters themselves changes them to either alpha or beta, which you can then pick up and store at the top of the screen. Get 3 of any mixture of these letters and you'll be given a robot friend that hovers above you, supplying some extra firepower. But what that firepower will be is up to what combination of letters that you collected, as it can completely change based on what letter you chose and what order you picked them up in. You'll definitely need to experiment and remember different combinations, as the weaponry your robot buddy has can vary wildly depending on what you chose. Most of them offer a very helpful projectile attack that can make you almost unstoppable, but you'll need to be careful as your robot friend takes damage separate from you and can eventually die. Oh, and if you're really good and can manage to pick up the exact same set of letters in the exact same order while you already have a robot up and running, you'll combine with it, making you even more powerful with a whole new set of attacks. If this whole power-up system sounds insane and crazy, then yeah, I guess it kinda is. But it's also super creative and adds an element of experimentation into a style of game that was rarely more than just shoot stuff to win. Once you've wrapped your head around how to play Shatterhand, it's time to start punching your way to victory throughout 6 stages that can vary from just sorta hard to insanely difficult. After you've beat the first stage, you're presented with a level select screen so you can tackle any stage you want whenever you want, which definitely helps keep your controller intact if one particular stage is giving you fits. Making your way through each stage is a fairly straightforward process, since all you're basically doing is just running around and exploding everything on the screen with your fist. But the stages in Shatterhand do at least offer up a great variety that really makes each level feel like a brand new challenge, rather than just a new backdrop to do the same thing you just did on the previous stage over again. Each stage features some really great layouts, traps, and enemies that constantly keep you on your toes, making you change up how you approach challenges on a stage-to-stage basis. And of course, we can't forget the bosses that patiently wait for you at the end of each level, though most are kinda underwhelming and easy just for how challenging the rest of the game is. Still though, the variety offered up in Shatterhand is a refreshing change of pace from most NES action games that seem to focus more on repetition and cheap tactics rather than trying to engage the player with new and unique challenges throughout. As I mentioned at the beginning of this review, I genuinely think Shatterhand is a rare gem of a game that was sadly overshadowed by the Super NES launch. Only the absolutely hardcore were still getting excited about what was coming out on the old and crusty NES when 16-bit Mega Power was being blasted into your eyeballs just about everywhere you went. Over the years though, Shatterhand has finally gotten the attention it deserves thanks to YouTube reviews and retro gaming sites giving it its due, even if they're usually just making fun of it for that box. Seriously, Jalico, what the hell were you thinking with this? And if you never gave Shatterhand a chance back in the day or even knew it existed, it's still just as fun to pick up and play today, and you'll be in for a hell of an NES action game. Unfortunately though, due to only like 10 people ever buying Shatterhand, you won't be able to pick up a copy for anything below $60, even just for the cartridge by itself. So maybe grab a ROM and an emulator and try it out if you don't have cash spilling out your pockets for old NES games. No matter what you decide though, I can guarantee that Shatterhand won't let you down. And at the very least, you can always stare at that box for hours of entertainment by itself.